Now, I mentioned the Prime Minister's failed referendum. We all know now that 60% of Australians voted no to a change to our Constitution. Now, it had the government's undivided attention for months. It was the only thing we ever heard about. The Prime Minister was either on a plane travelling overseas or he was on television talking about The Voice. It failed to address all the other important issues like electricity and the cost of living that's now coming back to bite him. But in the Prime Minister's very cute and well-produced end-of-year recap video, it's a topic he seemed to have glossed over.
2023, the Matildas inspired a nation. Australians dominated Hollywood. Vegemite turned 100. It's been a big year. And even in the tough times, we saw the best of Australia. Families are feeling pressure. As a government, our main focus has been on delivering cost of living relief while taking pressure off inflation. We helped up to 5 million households and small businesses with rebates on their energy bills. Real wages have increased for the last 2 quarters. We've had nearly 300,000 enrolments in fee-free TAFE this year alone, with more to come. We've made a historic investment in Medicare, tripling the bulk billing incentive to make it easier and cheaper to see a doctor.
What a crock. I mean, don't you hate those staged pieces like that with actors pretending to be families outside of an IGA? I mean, it really drives me nuts. Shadow Indigenous Australians Minister Jacinta Nampijinpa, she's accused the Prime Minister of being, quote, missing in action since the defeat with no plan to address disadvantage. I'm pleased to say the Senator's on the line. What did you make of the video, Jacinta?
Look, it's this Prime Minister's fantasy. Looking back on the year, he failed at the beginning of last year to effectively address the issues of crime that are going on the streets of Alice Springs. He came here, he threw a bit of money at the problem, he left, and really nothing much has changed. There's still incidents of crime occurring on our streets. I had a friend who was rammed by a stolen vehicle. Nothing much has changed. Obviously, the Prime Minister completely forgot that there was a referendum that was held right throughout the year. I certainly haven't forgotten because I think it's been one of the most busiest years of my entire life. But he clearly, just like throughout the campaign, once again is gaslighting Australians to pretend as though it didn't even occur in the first place.
Isn't it interesting when you look at it this way? It shows that we went through months and months and months of divisive debate, dividing the nation around this question. It lost as we predicted it would, and nothing's changed. So if it had gotten up, probably nothing would have changed either in the areas that you so brilliantly prosecuted during the campaign.
That's exactly right. I mean, the fact that the government spent over $400 million on this, not to mention the donations that were made to the Yes campaign, well, do we know if they've been expended? Where is the money now? What has it been? Was it all expended on the entire campaign? Was it not? The calls from the Australian people as a result of this to actually hold inquiry into organisations that are funded to improve the lives of our most disadvantaged. And still this government is failing to heed those calls. But clearly the result, 60-40 result that the Australian people delivered, as well as those messages, has indicated to the Prime Minister what he needs to do. He didn't have a backup plan. There was never a plan B because they were determined they were going to win this referendum, and now they're scrambling for ways forward, for a plan of some sort. They cannot put anything into action. They don't have anything.
Is one Indigenous kid in Alice Springs better off because of the Voice process?
No, there isn't. I mean, as I said, the situation hasn't changed much at all. We've been calling for a Royal Commission into the sexual abuse of Indigenous children. We know the evidence is stark that demonstrates that our kids, the most marginalised kids in this country, also experience the highest rates of sexual abuse in this country, and yet this government continues to ignore the calls for this to take place over and over again. And no, the situation hasn't improved on the ground. Once more, those kids that stole the vehicle, that rammed a good friend of mine with it, ending up in hospital with that incident, some of them were as young as 12. Nothing's changed on the ground.
Just finally, when you talk to parents of some of those children who are trying to do their best to bring them up, how let down do they feel by the fact that the man who's the Prime Minister of their country could jet in there for a couple of hours, do basically nothing and fly out again, and then the rest of the country, the media and everybody just goes, oh, well, maybe it never happened, we'll move on?
Look, there are many in the community that are beside themselves. There are elders in this community that have plans to support these vulnerable children. The Yipperinya school, the elders of that school, they've had a proposal sitting in front of the Minister Burney, as well as the Education Minister Clare, as well as obviously the Prime Minister, and still they're not listening to community members. The voice was about listening. I don't know how many times I've heard this Prime Minister say, when you listen to Indigenous Australians and work with them, well, there's groups of Indigenous people right around the country that they have been flat out ignoring and continuing to ignore because they didn't get their referendum up.
He should be ashamed when he sees some of those pictures. Jacinta Nampijinpa Price, have a great Christmas. Thanks for joining us tonight on Sky. What a fabulous job she did right through that campaign.